you see like the ant, and literally, I don't know if it's a fungus, a parasite, a mushroom, or what, but it grows out of the ant's head and it's like controlling this ant.
There are signals coming from the gut that are firing up to the brain and giving commands to the brain that are then triggering different thought processes, triggering belief systems to come in a particular situation in certain contexts. Probably not your intuition telling you to eat that candy bar. That's a parasite.
All right, Mike, you ever watch National Geographic or Planet Earth, or any of those nature shows?
I love Planet Earth.
I'm a big fan of Planet Earth as well. I'm not gonna lie, but probably the most quoted thing I've ever said. For some reason, I'm not gonna say under what influence we were, but we were watching the desert episode, and the simple statement I said was, "Man, I've never seen so much sand before in my life." But Planet Earth, amazing. Oceans, another amazing production. But there's the one on the insects, and this is in relation to an email you sent out a while ago. And you see like the ant, and literally, I don't know if it's a fungus, a parasite, a mushroom, or what, but it grows out of the ant's head and it's like controlling this ant. And when you sent that email asking, are parasites controlling your brain? I could not get that visual out of my head. So my question to you, Mike, is there a little person in my head pulling the knobs and the levers, controlling every movement that has gotten us here today?
There's this idea that we are, like, every part of who we are is who we are, and that my thoughts are my thoughts and my feelings are my feelings, and this is what makes me different from you, and that's just the way I am. And I know that I used to think of myself as an individual, but the
Mhm.
reality is everything that makes up, Mike Bledsoe is an ecosystem. There's a whole planet, there's a whole world inside of, like, this layer of skin that separates me from the outside world. And inside of here, there's not just human cells, there's bacteria and there's fungus and there are parasites, and everything in the body has an agenda. And so anything that's not a human cell is going to have their own agenda for their own survival. And if you've been listening to the show up until this point, if you listen to previous episodes, you may have gotten the hint that the gut brain axis is a thing, that
Yeah.
there are signals coming from the gut that are firing up to the brain and giving commands to the brain that are then triggering different thought processes, triggering belief systems to come in a particular situation in certain contexts. And so you may have a parasite in your brain, but you're definitely going to have parasites and fungus in your gut. In the very least, you likely have some parasites in your organs. And when these parasites have their own agendas, and so they're going to tell you, I want this type of food. And so you may feel like you have a craving for a certain type of food, or like, I really like this thing. It may not necessarily be the case that you really like this particular type of food. You may have an organism in your body that loves whatever nutrients that particular food is providing you, and your body's not even getting it. And this is where, like, intuitive eating gets a bit interesting, is because if somebody tries to go into intuitive eating and has never done a proper cleanse
Yeah.
or fasted for an extended period of time, it's probably not your intuition telling you to eat that candy bar. That's a parasite, or there's a fungal overgrowth. Have you heard of candida? Like, candida is a
No.
fungus that can overgrow in your system, and it'll dictate. It'll give you sugar cravings, basically,
Huh.
because it thrives on sugar.
So when you say everything in the body has an agenda, especially when it comes to the cravings, um, I hear a lot of folks when there's diets involved. I did a cleanse, and I cut out caffeine and I cut out soy. And one of the responses someone gave me was like, there's just no way I can cut out coffee. and we live with the beliefs that we can't live without X or can't live without Y. So what you're saying is perhaps it's not just the person consciously needing said thing. And sure, there's other impacts of caffeine and sugar, the addictive properties, but there's also, let's say, a third party putting in a vote as to what it is we want to eat, what we don't want to eat, what it is we crave. And as much as we try and white knuckle a certain diet, there's still literally voices, not necessarily in our head, in our second head, the gut, that's charging forward for something else.
Right. It's creating not just creating cravings, but also will impact your mood. And that I know that you really like to talk about, and we've talked about like HRV and vagus nerve up until now. What's going on with parasites in your system can impact the vagus nerve. So it can put you in a constant state of fight or flight. So somebody who's experiencing anxiety could could see huge results from doing a cleanse where they get rid of a lot of these parasites, and when they do so, their anxiety goes down, their HRV goes up, their sleep improves, and that begins to compound. And now they go from being depressed or anxious and to or sad to happy and ready to take on the day. And so uh, it's yeah, in our society, we tend to want to think, this one thing is causing this. And if you talk to a psychologist, they want to do a whole map of your subconscious, and they want to do this and that. It might be as easy as getting some sunlight, drinking some water, and doing a cleanse. And then all of a sudden, all these pharmaceutical drugs become unnecessary. And so, and a lot of things to do a cleanse are old. These are not like the protocols I use for my cleanse. I use some modern stuff, but the core of it is stuff that's been practiced for centuries. Oh, you're experiencing something like this. You should take some wormwood. You should take this herb or that herb. And you start taking those herbs, and then things start flushing out of your body, and you go, oh, this is not it's not new in a lot of ways. Now there's some new methods I use when I'm doing a cleanse that I'll share here. But it goes beyond cravings. It impacts your mood. You may be you have chronic anxiety, chronic depression, whatever it is. It could be a bug or a series of bugs in you that are causing the issue. So yeah, and here's the other thing is most people will go, well, I've never been to another country and went into the jungle and got a parasite. Dude, there are parasites. Everyone's got some parasites living in them. They do fulfill a role at times. They can be the cleanup crew. Um, if you've ever walked around in the summer barefoot, you've picked up parasites. Doesn't matter where you're from, you pick them up. And so um, there are ways to detox these things and regain control and have a lot more clarity. Anytime I've done one, I have a ton of more clarity afterwards.
So I was gonna ask, and I mean, you already answered the question saying everyone has parasites, because the first question was gonna be, okay, instantly I want to know, okay, do I have parasites or not? But a follow-up question would be, then everyone has parasites, but then it's like, to what extent, right? I imagine there's varying impacts, and because of that, that will also determine, and even the type of parasites that you might have would determine the symptoms that you might experience. So for anybody who is curious as to how many parasites they're dealing with, or what type of impacts they're having, what symptoms should they look out for, how do they know if they're being influenced or if it's truly their own thoughts that are craving for that chocolate chip cookie?
First thing I'll mention is in the Western world, a lot of times we want a medical diagnosis first. And the problem with parasites is you can go to a doctor and you can get a test done, but they're only capable of testing for a small amount. There's so many that are not testable. And so instead of relying on a test and going, I want to target this one particular parasite, I my this is my opinion. And I am not a doctor, but I've been managing my own health for a long time. I've hang out with smart people, um, and I've advised people who were going through a lot of these processes, and I've witnessed a lot myself. And so, uh, the ultimate test to see if you have a parasite is to do a cleanse and see what happens. If you don't have any parasites and you do a cleanse and you feel perfectly fine throughout the entire cleanse, then you're good. If you have what are called die-off symptoms, which we'll get into, then you know that you had parasites. I've never done a cleanse and didn't find some parasites in there. And so, uh, and worst case scenario, you do the cleanse and you improve the vitality of your body in the process. Because there's nothing about the cleanse that would be harmful in the absence of parasites. You would clean up your diet and be really strict for about 2 months, and your metabolic flexibility would improve, your body fat would drop, your mental clarity would go up. There's a lot of benefits. So, because the diet I use is I'm in ketosis the whole time when I do a cleanse. So, if I'm not experiencing die-off symptoms, then I'm incredibly clear and enjoying myself. Now, I'm going to list off, these are the common symptoms of parasite and fungal overload. So this means that you've accumulated too much of this fungus or parasites. And this goes, we've been talking a lot about parasites, but fungus falls in this category as well. And you handle them both at the same time. If anyone's ever just targeting parasites and they're not also like having a conversation about fungus, then these two kind of work together symbiotically, and so they both need to be addressed at the same time. But here's the list.
Will this fungus cleanse work for that same fungus in The Last of Us? You know, that mushrooms that take over the whole world and whatnot. Is this the solution right here? I mean, I'm just curious. Inquiring minds want to know.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how that fungus, what it's made of. So these are some of the physical symptoms. I'm going to read them off: bloating, gas, constipation, or diarrhea. Doesn't mean that you have it constantly, but if you experience that regularly. Itchy skin, rashes, eczema, hives, teeth grinding, especially at night, fatigue that lingers despite rest, bad breath or coated tongue. If you stick your tongue out and it's got a white coat on it, unexplained aches and soreness. That could also be like joints popping very frequently. If your joints pop a lot, people go, "Oh, my joints have always just popped a lot." Could be fungus and parasites. Mental and emotional, anxiety, irritability, mood swings, brain fog or difficulty focusing, vivid dreams or poor sleep, cravings for sugar and carbs. Do you experience any of that, Ted?
I would say I experience, ironically enough, it's the joint popping. It's almost well, not so much anymore. Honestly, as you were reading off the symptoms, the one that stood out was teeth grinding at night. I used to do that, don't do that anymore. Had a mouth guard and everything. I'm not sharing any pictures, no matter how many times you ask. But the popping is something that it used to happen a lot more. It still happens to a certain degree, and I thought I was just like activating the body, getting up. Like, you wake up, you're like pop, 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 crack, 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 and I'm like, all right, let's get it. But I guess
Well,
that's not a
it doesn't
natural
mean that
thing.
it's absolutely parasite and fungus that's causing that, but it could be a symptom of it. Like, it could be other things too. So I'm not saying
Mhm.
this is like the end all be all. And this is where a lot of times people in the health world get in trouble, is they're like, if you have this, then you have this. And it's like, it's much more complex than that. Anyone who says with definition, they go, this is definitely this or that, based off of a very limited amount of information like I just presented, is probably new to the game and hasn't been around long enough, because the answer is always, it depends. Let's get greater context about your situation. Again, though, when I'm working with people, like I had a client a while back. He goes, "Oh, I'm going to go to the dermatologist," and this was a business client. He goes, "I'm going to go to a dermatologist. I've got, like, a rash on my arm. I've been been developing. And I go, okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna take a bet. I bet you go to a dermatologist. He's gonna tell you it's eczema, or he's gonna tell you it's a rash, and then he'll give you a topical cream, and then he's not gonna be able to give you much more information than that. And he goes, okay. He goes to the doctor, comes back the next week, goes, that's exactly what happened. He didn't know what it was, gave me a cream, and didn't give. And I told him, I was like, ask him if there's any dietary changes you could make. The doc's like, I don't know. I'm a dermatologist. Why would I know anything about nutrition? But that your skin is a reflection of what's happening in the gut. And so, if anything's going on in the skin, it's a gut issue. It doesn't mean that topical solutions aren't going to improve the symptoms, but it's not going to get down to the root cause. Root cause is what's happening in the gut. And so, it's like I said, there could be something else going on outside of parasites and fungus. It's a very big thing. Almost, you probably don't know many people that have done a proper parasite and fungal cleanse, and not many people do them. But the people that I know that have gotten really serious about it for, I've known people to go into like 9-month protocols for things, and the result, it can be very challenging because you're on a strict diet for that amount of time. You're taking certain supplements, and you can feel ill and experience flu-like symptoms and things like that as you're going through the process. But on the other side of it is they always look brighter. Their skin looks good. They're thinking more clearly. Their fertility goes up, especially in women. Another thing is, like, a lot of times, my wife, she's done this cleanse with me before. Every time her cycle improves, it becomes much more predictable, and cramps and bloating and all that stuff during the bleed cycle, it sees dramatic improvements. Like, barely, notices that there's a change going on.
So, I mean, it sounds as if there's really nothing to lose from doing a cleanse, either to identify how much of a parasite and fungal overload we're dealing with, or just to get a new baseline and a sense of clarity on the other side of it. You threw out two date ranges, and just for folks to have a tempered expectation, right? How long would a typical cleanse be? I know you mentioned 2 months. Some people do the 9-month protocol. Shout out to the dogs who do the 9-month. But for anybody who's like, bro, I'm just looking to test this out, is there like a 30-day option, of this? What does that look like?
Depends on how deep you want to go. And so if you want to do 30 days, say you want to do 30 days, and in those 30 days, you're going to find out if you have anything or not. You go, I'm going to eat this way. And by the way, I've got all this information on my blog that people go, oh, I want to see in writing what this looks like. I've got links to supplements. I've got a custom GPT that I created that will give you recipes and meal plans. And if you go, oh, this is what I'm experiencing, I'm having a weird morning, you drop it in the GPT, it's going to tell you exactly what's going on. It's really, really helpful. I programmed it using a lot of different sources of information. I know that if you want to do it long enough just to see if maybe you have something, you could do 2 weeks. And let's say 3 weeks. If you do 3 weeks of the protocol I have on the blog, you're likely going to experience die-off symptoms at some point. If you experience the die-off symptoms, then you have something. Now, one of my mentors, Paul Check, his approach on this is, if you have fungus, which most people have some fungus as well, it really requires a very strict diet for 6 months to really get it. As if you're an adult and you've had fungus growing in your body your whole life, it really takes 6 months to really improve your human vitality, the human body vitality, enough to keep out the overgrowth from happening again. You're always going to have some. If you say you do 3 weeks or a month and you start suppressing it, And what then and then you reintroduce, carbs and sugars again, it may come back even stronger. So it's a really in my opinion, I'd tell people I wouldn't start it unless you're really serious about a 60-day cleanse. And now there's some people out there that sell products that sell 30-day products. They sell products and give no nutritional advice. They give no advice on how you should eat during it. I think there's probably some like legal issues around that. Um, I think technically you're not supposed to give nutrition advice unless you're a registered dietitian or something like that. I don't know. I don't follow those rules. Not necessarily like I'm not here coaching people through this process. I'm just putting out information, so it's not really an issue for me. But I think that some people are afraid to give actual good advice, or they have a supplement and they want to sell the supplement, and you'll feel better in 30 days taking it and not doing all the full thing. But if you really want to handle it all the way, my opinion is either go full send or don't do it. Now, if you want to do 3 weeks just to see if you have it, then do that. But more than likely, you're going to find something and then you're going to want to stick with it for the rest of the time. Because if you only, this isn't one of those things where like, if you go halfway, you're guaranteed to get half the results. If you go halfway, you may end up having like a strong rebound effect.
Yeah,
And
like it gets
so,
worse afterwards.
yeah. And then the parasites they follow lunar and seasonal cycles. So if we look at the year, they become very active in the summer. And in the fall and the spring, they're like medium active. It has to do with the heat. And in the winter, they become very dormant. And so if you want to run a cleanse, you want to run it in the spring or the fall, because in the summer, you're probably just going to be picking more of them up. You're just going to be like recycling the system basically. And in the winter, if they're dormant, they're going to be hard to suss out basically. You want to like invite them out so that you can expose them to the supplements and the herbs. They're gonna basically kill them and flush them out. And so the so that's the seasonal cycles to concern yourself with. So if I'm doing one of these, I do it in the fall or the spring. And then there's also lunar cycles that they're following. So during a new moon, they're more dormant, and during a full moon, they're more active. And so, like I'm in a cleanse right now, and today's the full moon,
Yeah,
and
Beaver Moon.
I had a lot of yeah, the biggest one.
Yeah, Beaver Super Moon, baby.
Yeah, well, you're a meteorologist. How does this play? Do
What
you
was
guys
that?
do you guys do moon shit in meteorology?
Well, my
Or how's
expertise
that?
goes up into how the moon impacts the tides. I don't know much about how the parasites and the fungus react, but I do know that a lot of weird things happen around the full moon. And as you
Yeah,
mentioned all this and the impacts parasites have on people, you almost see the evidence lining up through just the experiential data that we have, right? So as I know, full moons, obviously the super moon is closest to the Earth in its orbit, and that's what makes it seem a certain percent bigger in the sky. I believe it's about 22% bigger and brighter in the sky. Beaver Moon, just because of the season, this is when beavers are more active, building up their dams ahead of the winter. So they name the moons based off of like the harvest moon, right before the fall harvest and all that. But that's where my expertise ends, right there. When it
I've
comes to the
never
parasite
heard.
and fungus, it's your
I
game.
I'd like to verify this because I've heard this, so people can comment on the YouTube in the description and tell me if I'm how accurate this is. But I have heard like crime rates go up during full moons. Uh, the
Mhm.
amount of people that are in the ER, there's more people in the ER in full moons. Um,
Yeah.
I think that I've heard that. I haven't gone out and verified these stats or anything like that. But
So I haven't verified the stats myself. There is a correlation. I won't say causation, but there is a correlation between odd occurrences, accidents, crime rates around full moons. At least that I gather. Being in the news industry, we tend to cover certain stories where we will look at each other and ask each other, like, is this a full moon right now? What's going on? But hey, it could be the moon increasing the activities of said parasites and fungus.
Yeah, now you're doing things that are outside of your, that was out of character. It was like, oh, maybe the parasites were just really active during that time. So, yeah, we're not talking about causation here. We're just speculating on correlation here. But 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 when you're doing a cleanse, you definitely want to. One of the ideas is to make sure that you are uh, peaking your cleanse protocol around the full moon. So you don't want to be backing off of the full moon. You want to be like really ramping up during the full moon. So leading up to the full moon this time is when I had some die-off symptoms. And then uh and so in a 60-day period, I'm likely going to go through 2 full moons. And during the cleanse that I have, people are likely going to have a die-off symptoms every week or two. So what happens is there's a the herbs build up in the system, a lot of the parasites will and fungus will die, and then it gets collected by the system, and it has to be the garbage has to be taken out. And so it'll build up in the system and then flushed out. And then a week or two later, you go a layer deeper. And there, because these things embed deeper and deeper in the system. And then after a cleanup happens, a lot of times the parasites are like, oh shit, they drop their eggs and their larvae, and those go dormant and they live in the system. And then after a couple weeks, they come back out. And then that's why you have to have multiple cleanups. It's not just one shot here. And so, and this is why I like a 60-day cleanse, is because you're likely going to get 3 or 4 cycles, and each cycle you're going to get a deeper level of it. And so, um, so so there's that as well. And this is why, like, after the cleanse, you want to reintroduce a clean diet with more variety that's outside of the cleanse diet, but not just go straight for the Skittles afterwards, because then anything that's left will just be like, ooh, here we are again. Let's procreate and like spread again really fast, you know.
Yeah.
So
I I want to make sure I touch on this because we've mentioned multiple times of like the norm or society, the average being mediocre. And I can't help but address the fact that we are recording this because you said stay away from the Skittles, and I just had a vivid memory of a week ago, my daughter going trick or treating for the first time, and obviously all the candy comes in, and she's not eating the candy; she just experienced the whole process of walking up to the door, trick or treating, and getting candy, which she picked up on right away and loved it. But um, most in the fall are looking at Halloween, already preparing for Thanksgiving, leading right into Christmas. We're talking about doing a cleanse and more of a strict diet during a very gluttonous time of the year. So I do want to highlight that really quick in terms of the counterintuitiveness and even the counterculturism that's needed to be successful in something like this when it comes to doing the cleanse.
well, one thing I mentioned on before we started recording is I would love to do like a group cleanse in the full stack community, because it can get a bit lonely because you're eating like a no starch, no sugar diet, and that by itself can get lonely. And then also people are experiencing different symptoms during the cleanse. Like you may so die off. I'll talk about the die off real quick. Spring might be easier for people because I think there's less gluttonous behavior. One thing I do want to address that you were talking about though is in the fall, yeah, you have Halloween. So basically, in Halloween hits, and people are eating sugar. Thanksgiving hits, and they're eating sugar. Christmas hits, they're eating sugar. Uh, and then on top of that, they're getting less sunlight. So everyone's vitamin D starts going down. Sugar goes up, and then we have this mysterious flu season that shows up every year, as if this magic virus thing just starts spreading uh, it, during this time of year? Well, it just might be, folks, that your body is really susceptible to getting sick if you get less sunlight and more sugar, and then you throw in the stress of seeing maybe the family dynamics aren't the most healthy, and now you have the stress of travel and the stress, emotional distress of dealing with family, and then some people, the holidays hit and it's a little bit financially stressful. I want to make sure my kids have a good Christmas, and you know, I I know that that's also a thing. And so you have all this stress, you have all this sugar, and you have low sunlight, and then now we have flu season. Very strange. So just correlative data here. I'm not saying anything's a cause, but something to keep in mind. These are the things that I think about. These are the things that I encourage other people to consider. So if you ever want to go, okay, I haven't had a flu shot since I left the Navy, so it's been 20 years, and I don't I don't get the flu, but I'm also not gorging on candy and all that. So, anyways, so yeah, you're right. Like doing this in the fall could be a really big challenge for people, and it might be the thing that where other people are being lethargic and slow. That's when you get to pull ahead. Like, I'm gonna roll into January feeling like a G. Other people are just like drank too much. They just got off of eating and drinking way too much, and now I hit January. I'm ready. So, but the spring could be easier. I'd love to do this in the community, but I would love to talk about the die off, because that sounds
Yeah,
kind of
yeah. You
scary.
mentioned it a couple of times. I want to hear more about this die off.
Yeah, it's the cliffhanger. Um, and there's a technical term for it. I think I might have it on the blog.
Or should we mention
Uh,
first like what's embedded in the cleanse, right? Because maybe folks want to know, like, am I going to a special supermarket? Am I going to just the herb section of the supermarket? Like, what do I need for the cleanse in order to get started?
yeah. So I have, by the way, I have no financial gain to make from any of these suggestions. I have a list. I reached out to the company to see if I get an affiliate code, but they haven't gotten back to me. They're a really old company. They've been doing this for a long time. Um, and so the links on the blog, the blog's at bledsoe.life. I'll make sure to include the link in the description of the show for YouTube. And uh, there is there's a package of supplements to buy during this time. Now, it's really not that expensive. I mean, I'm trying to remember. My wife and I think we spent less than $300 for 60 days worth of supplements for the cleanse. It's pretty good. Um, there's an herbal blend. It's called Paranix, an herbal blend to eliminate the parasites. There's internal sweep, which is a prebiotic, and additional herbs to help carry the waste out. There's a tea you drink at nighttime to help with the elimination. And then I also throw in another supplement called Carboxy, which is a carbon binder that like basically traps the toxins, including heavy metals, and helps remove them from the body. And that gets into not just your intestines, but into the organs of your body and helps bind to things and remove them safely. And so regarding like the diet, so most of the herbs you absolutely need are going to be in those supplements. Now, if you want to add in other herbs like oregano, if you want to add in garlic, there's certain things that are going to additionally be really helpful.
Turmeric. I know
What's
that's
that?
a toss up
Turmeric.
for a lot of people.
Um, turmeric is beneficial, um, and also what's the root? Uh, Ginger. Ginger is really good. And so I need my wife on this one too, because what I did was I programmed a custom GPT that has everything and will produce the recipes. So on top of the supplements, the custom GPT will give you meal plans uh, uh, and and grocery store lists and all that. You do want to eat the meat you eat, you want to be grass fed. You want to be wild caught. You don't want to be. You want to be eating the cleanest meat you can get your hands on. You also want to be getting everything organic, even though organic doesn't mean quite what it once was, but it's still better than conventional. We try to go to the farmers market and get everything from the farmers. Because if you're eating things that have pesticides on them and stuff like that, now you're putting up more of a load on your system, and you're giving anytime your physical system isn't operating at the highest, you're giving food to the parasites. Like you're giving them a reason to be there. And so it's good to just eat clean. And so I mean, and this is where the cleansing diet, no sugar, grains, dairy. The only exception there is ghee, because it's highly refined butter, basically. So no sugar, grains, dairy, starches. Proteins, I'm looking at my list right now: wild fish, grass-fed meat, pasture-raised eggs, fats, ghee, olive oil, avocado, coconut. We do a lot of coconut butter, coconut oil. We have, you can ask the GPT for fat bombs, and it allows me to get enough fat during the day easily. Also, C8 oil, which is a part of coconut oil, is really good at breaking down the cell walls of a lot of fungus. Veggies that you really want to get into is garlic, greens, cruciferous. So that's your broccoli, your cauliflower, your Brussels sprouts. Onions are great. And herbs and that you really want to nail down is cilantro and parsley. I've got sauerkraut on there. I don't do any fermented stuff, no sauerkraut in the first 30 days, and then I start introducing it after the first 30 days. And so uh, we save money when we do a cleanse. A lot of times people hear this and go, "Oh, it sounds expensive." Bro, do you think we eat out? We don't eat out during the cleanse. It's because if we were to go to a restaurant and go eat out, and then I'm going to tell them I need this, can't have that, and all that, I'm going to have a, they're not going to make a very exciting meal for me. And so during this period of time, we don't eat out at all. So yeah, and then on top of that, one of the things I found was sometimes when you're buying things at the store, it's like, damn, this is expensive. You're looking at the items, but then you go to check out and it's about the same. So the quality of the food goes way up during the cleanse, but I go to check out at the register and it's about the same as what I normally spend. The difference is there's no potato chips, there's no snacks, there's no, like, all the fun drinks that we normally drink. They're not in there. It's very, like, one of the things that we do is I change out any fun drinks with, I do like a couple tablespoons of apple cider vinegar and a cup full of sparkling water. So that helps with the cleanse, and that's kind of like my fun fizzy drink. Like, oh, we're gonna sit down and watch a show. I pour that. That helps improve digestion. So there's a lot of, and that's way cheaper than buying those canned artificially flavored drinks that you dude, they're selling these drinks now that are like $3 a can at these stores. They taste amazing, but damn, I can buy some high quality ACV, apple cider vinegar, and some good sparkling water, spend way less. So anyone who's listening to this and goes, man, this sounds expensive. First off, you spend money on the supplements, you spend money on high quality food, but you're not eating out. I bet you save money.
Does kombucha work with this at all? This diet, or is that probably something you hold off until after
No,
the first 30
no,
days? No
no,
kombucha.
no. That's going to be the problem with kombucha is it's got sugar in it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is going to feed it. So, um, yeah. One thing I do want to talk about, I want to get to the die off.
Let's do it.
I want to get the die off. Yeah. Keep on alluding to it. It's the thing that, like, when I first did the cleanse, I didn't think anything about the die off, and then I start having the symptoms, and I go, "What the hell is going on?" You know, I thought I was going to feel better by doing this. And I've also had clients back in the day. I used to, when I was running my gym, and I would take somebody who was on a really unhealthy diet, and then we would put them on a ketogenic, someone who's diabetic, put them on a paleo ketogenic diet. And then within a couple weeks, they start having flu-like symptoms, and they go, "Oh my God, is this diet killing me?" And we're like, "No, no, no, no. You're good. You're experiencing something called keto flu." Is what I thought about it then. Now I'm realizing, dude, you go keto, if you've been eating sugar and starches every single day of your life, and then you cut that out for 2 weeks, that fungus is gonna throw a fit. And you're gonna have some die-off symptoms. Even if you're not doing the full cleanse, if you just go keto, you're gonna have some die-off symptoms, and that's gonna feel you're gonna feel like something's wrong. So a lot of times people ditch, they think that they're only supposed to feel better, but you're everything in cycles. So the die-off symptoms look like this: fatigue, itchiness, mood swings, headaches, or skin flare-ups. And so there's ways of, and so what ends up happening is you're taking these herbs and you're starving out the fungus and parasites, and it starts building up in the system, and the system gets a little overwhelmed, and then it when that happens, you want to chill out and relax. The organs are having to do extra work to clean things out. Your poops are going to smell different, might have like a ammonia smell or a sulfur smell. That's the biofilms being broken down and then being collected in the intestines and then being excreted out. So there are ways to minimize the die-off symptoms, and it's not going to minimize the die-off. It's going to help you minimize the symptoms of die-off. You want your body to be flushing this stuff out. Like I've run a fever for a day doing it before. I've had a rash come up before. I've had like dry skin show up on my cheeks or on my feet before. Uh, the other day, my wife was feeling like they were like itchy, like she's like, feels like there's bugs crawling under my skin. I'm like, I hate to break it to you, but there might be some bugs underneath your skin freaking out and trying to figure out how to get out, you know? So these are die-off symptoms. And so it can feel scary or creepy, but it's just that you're getting in touch with the reality of what's happening in your body. You know, a lot of people will just be happy, like, I don't want to know. It's like, well, it doesn't, not knowing doesn't mean that it's not there. So, uh, if you're tracking your HRV may drop, your sleep may become poor, all that kind of stuff. Afterwards, though, you're going to experience a big rebound. And I've had rebounds after die off where my creativity just starts blowing up. My energy goes through the roof. I can see things I couldn't see before. I start connecting dots. I start feeling like Bradley Cooper and Limitless. It's like, oh, I was trying to take all these supplements to get there. I didn't need more of something. I actually needed less of something. I need to get rid of something, not add something in order to get that clarity. And so, mood improves, all that. So some tricks for this is what I do. This is what I do to speed up, to reduce the symptoms of uh, of the die off, and then while I'm experiencing die off, I ramp these things up. And you could do so many different things. Like if you talk to the custom GPT I built, it could give you a lot of different things. This is what I do: is I use coffee enemas, and I use a supplement called carboxy, which is a really um, great binder. And so, and here's the thing: is when parasites are dying in your system, a lot of those parasites have heavy metals in them. So they're dying off, and then those heavy metals can be absorbed into your system. And so this is where having a good binder comes in handy. Now, the list of supplements I put before does have a binder in there, and it does work well, but carboxy is an even better binder. So what I'll do is I'll do the binder that comes in that supplement stack in the morning. I follow that protocol. In the afternoon, I do my carboxy. When I'm starting to feel some die-off symptoms, first thing in the morning, I brew my coffee. I make about I make a few quarts of coffee, and or no, how much coffee do I make? That's about 5 cups of coffee. It's 5 cups of coffee, a little more than a quart. And then I put it in my enema bag, hang it on the shower. I get in the bathtub, I run that hose, use a little coconut oil. I pop that guy
Woo!
right in my butt.
You let it
I
cool down
lay on
first, I
my
hope.
side. Absolutely. Actually, the first time I did it, I almost didn't think of that. And then I go, let me read the instructions again. Just sticking something up my butt. Dude, the first time I did a coffee enema was probably 10 years ago. And it was like there was a point in time where it was all the rage. Like people discovered the health benefits of coffee enemas and everyone started doing it. And I go, man, I never put anything up my butt. I don't know about this putting things up my butt thing, but I got the courage to do it. Finally, dude, I remember getting my coffee enema set, and it didn't leave the shelf in my bathroom for like 3 or 4 months.
I hope you
And
ordered
then
this online because that's got to be a weird like interaction ordering like a coffee enema set and you go to the cashier and if they know what it is, you got to make eye contact, give them change.
yeah, I mean these are all Amazon orders. Again, I'm gonna remind people I don't make any money from this. You can get enema sets on Amazon. I use Ben Greenfield's coffee, the Keon coffee. So you want to make sure you have like really high quality, organic, mycotoxin free, like really high quality coffee.
Just like my toilet paper, only the best for my bottom.
That's right. That's right. So so you make the coffee and it's not like I just make it in a French press. It's a different process. You cook it in a little bit different way. So make the coffee, let it cool off to room temperature, lay on my side, pop the hose in, and hold it for 15 to 20 minutes. And in that 15 to 20 minutes, so basically I've drank like 4 or 5 cups of coffee with my butt. And then I lay there and my stomach is doing all sorts of things. When I haven't done one for a while, like right now, I'm getting back into it. I haven't done it in 6 months. It's like the first 2 times I do it, because I try to do it twice a week when I'm doing the cleanse. The cramps in the belly, that like it really challenges me psychologically of like keep it in because it wants to come out. Things are gurgling, things are moving around. So the reason you want to keep it in at 15 to 20 minutes is it then it takes that long. The liver goes through a cycle about every 15 minutes, and you want to be holding the coffee in your colon and during that period of time, and then it cycles to the liver, and the liver is responsible for creating glutathione, and glutathione the is the body's antioxidant. There's people now take it. I remember when a time when you didn't take exogenous glutathione, you just your body made glutathione. Now there's glutathione supplements and glutathione injections, and people are doing all sorts of stuff with glutathione now. But you can increase your own glutathione production by many multiples. And so that also helps detox the system, lowers the inflammation in the system. And then the coffee being present in there helps remove the fungus. And then what it does is it tells the digestive system to flush it out. Just like pull everything out and flush it out. So what I do is I do the coffee enema twice a week, about 8 or 9 a.m. I'll be in there doing that. Afterwards, you go straight to the toilet, and it's the most emptying number 2 you've ever had.
the
Incredibly relieving. It's an interesting smell. It's like coffee and poo, you know. Um, And then I wait 45 minutes and then I take the carboxy because what I did is I just loosened everything up and the carboxy is a binder and it goes in there and it helps uh anything so it doesn't get reabsorbed. It binds to things and then I'll move the rest of it out. And so if I'm doing that, that helps everything stay moving and it keeps the liver producing that glutathione that is lowering the oxidative stress in the system, which lowers the inflammation in the system. And I and then the energy from a coffee enema is different than drinking coffee. When you get the caffeine in your system that way, it's a lot cleaner. So I feel very sharp after coffee enemas. They're fantastic. And so that's a while I'm doing a cleanse, I do it every, a couple times a week. But if I start feeling die-off symptoms, I clear the schedule if I can. I do the coffee enema, because it's going to take a couple hours between like brewing it and then letting it cool off, doing it, and then doing the whole thing. So that's that's how I manage the die-off. And in the beginning, like I hated coffee enemas, and over time, I look forward to them. Like, man, I feel so good afterwards. And it becomes easier. Like I said, the first time you do it, there's cramps and you're fighting to keep it in and sweating and I'm moaning and groaning. And then after when I'm in a cleanse and I'm up to like my fourth or fifth time and it's a few weeks in, I'm like, okay, this is not a big deal at all. I'll just chill in here for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I know we joked around a lot, had a lot of laughs in that, but that's all to really mitigate
As
the
we should.
symptoms of the die off. Exactly. Like it, if we're not
Yeah.
laughing and enjoying life, what are we really doing, right? But
Yeah.
it's to mitigate the die off and the symptoms that we'll feel because it could overload the body. There's a lot of things going on, and this just keeps things moving. The binder carboxy that you mentioned follows that up to bind everything that was just loosened up, and you do this, you mentioned 4 or 5 times through a cleanse, or how many times?
A couple times a week.
A couple times a week.
So I'll find like I'll do like Thursdays and Sundays. And so right. And then if I do that, I normally don't really experience diet, but sometimes like I'm like, oh, I'm feeling it, maybe it's Tuesday, and I'm like, okay, I'll do my best to do it real quick, or I'll schedule it for the very next morning.
How long does the die off last usually? I know if we're aiming for 60-day minimum for the cleanse, how far into the cleanse are we experiencing die off if we're doing it right? And how much of the cleanse will be in the die off period?
If you're doing the protocol I have on the blog, you're probably gonna be around like day. I mean, if you've never done anything like this before, it's hard to say. It might be on like day 3. If you've done, if you're pretty clean, it might be like day 10 to 15. Um, that you're definitely going to experience something within the first 15 days. If you don't experience anything in the first 15 days, then I would be surprised. Um, and so, uh, I mean, if you're in bad shape already, you might have a hard time telling the difference between die off and just normal life. But uh, yeah, you're gonna experience that. And if you do the 60 days, you're gonna experience die off symptoms 3 or 4 times during that period. If you don't do the coffee enemas, if you don't do the extra precautions to minimize the symptoms of die off, they're gonna last 2 to 4 days. So you could have fatigue and brain fog for 2 to 4 days. For me, when I'm doing the coffee enemas and the carboxy, less than 24 hours. I may wake up with fatigue. I do that, and usually later that afternoon, I'm doing well again. Yeah.
We back, baby. We back. Let's talk about, I guess, coming
Yeah.
towards the tail end of it, right? Because we want to be able to settle back into our norm in a responsible way, much like folks who they do the fast, right? They're like, okay, I did a 72-hour
Yeah.
fast, and then I got myself a big ass steak to break my fast. It's like, oh, dog, hold on, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't want to get all clean and cleansed and then jump in the deep end into some parasites right on the back end. So what would be the proper way to finish off the cleanse and then settle back into our normal daily lives?
Yeah. What's gonna happen is you'll and by the way, you could throw fasting in during the cleanse and keep the keep the supplements in there, and that would speed things up as well. I don't, not really gonna reduce your die-off symptoms. It may like speed some things up, but just throwing that in there because you said the word fast, and I go, okay. Sometimes someone might ask, "Can I fast during this?" Absolutely. You're gonna experience the way I've got this program. You'll experience ketosis, and then fasting will definitely ramp up the ketones in your body, and you'll get clarity faster. But yeah, reintroduce like blueberries, berries, and like light fruit that I wouldn't go straight for mangoes, which are high in sugar. I would do the berries first, maybe some apples here and there, a small amount, some potatoes, some more carrots, some starchier. Start introducing that type of stuff, maybe some fermented foods, sauerkraut. And so um, the the really wonderful thing about doing a cleanse like this is you'll learn how to prepare food in a way like really healthy food over that period of time because the diet's also there to increase your vitality. And so uh if you do this with dedication for 60 days, your psychology is going to change around your relationship to food. Those parasites and fungus that are driving a lot of those cravings aren't going to be there anymore. And sometimes what people can do is they've made some type of decision when they started this that, man, when they're 10 days into it and they're experiencing these cravings and they make this plan like, when I get off this, I'm gonna fucking go ham and like treat myself. But if you can put that aside after the 60 days, you're likely not going to have the cravings. You're not going to your relationship to the food you've been eating is going to change, and really give yourself space to have that, give that to yourself. And so you can start reintroducing, um, eat the same things you've been eating, but then start adding in the carbs there. And so because what you're doing is you're creating a whole new terrain in the body, and this new terrain needs to be cultivated. So, it's a 60-day cleanse, but if you're careful to reintroduce food over the next month after that, and let's just say I'm going to introduce potatoes first. Okay, how does my body like the potatoes? Or I'm going to introduce rice. How does you can reintroduce something every few days instead of just being like, I'm going to do it all. Then you can kind of like an elimination diet. You're like reducing the amount of variables and you're seeing how your body responds to certain things. And it gives the bacteria in your gut an opportunity to like slowly understand what's coming in and build around that. So if you do another 30 days where you're eating clean, but you're adding things in, after 3 months, I'd say eat however you want, but don't be surprised if what you desire to eat changes over that 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, I was thrusted into a similar process when I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and I had to keep a food journal when I started eating food again. And they're like, everybody's different. Some foods will react different, and I literally would I say broccoli makes me gassy. White rice, I can feel that digestion. That's a little harsher to digest. And there were things that I had to keep track of as I reintroduced them to understand how they interacted with my body. And to this day, there's eating habits established from that I still adhere to, which means I'm probably due for an update and an upgrade and into another reevaluation with things. But bringing this full circle to really the start of the podcast, when I talked about the parasite controlling the ant that's walking around, um, the overarching question is the why of it all, right? Because sure, as we said at the beginning, everybody has parasites. The question would be to what degree. But for anybody who hears the process and they hear about the coffee enema and they're like, oh, they might have been turned off by that. But what is the why behind doing all of this, right? I mean, in here in the full stack, we talk a lot about living that full stack life and getting in tune with ourselves and regulating our nervous system, making better decisions, operating from an area of sovereignty, not reacting to the world around us. What is the overarching why of cleansing the parasites and fungus in our bodies?
You're going to have more mental clarity. You're going to have a more stable emotional experience. You're going to have fewer digestive issues. You're going to absorb all the nutrients that you're eating more readily. Um, you're gonna live a fuller life for having done so. Um, the and things like this, your vagus nerve is connected to your gut, and your gut is running the show in so many ways. And if you clean up the gut, then you're gonna have, we've talked about all these different breath work techniques and things like this to improve HRV, but you could do this and then your HRV is going to improve. It's a big, on a macro level. You do this, say you commit to this one time, now your HRV improves for the rest of your life. You do this for 2 months and you have the benefits of the rest of your life. Um, I know a lot of people who they run this protocol once a year. Once a year they do a 2-month cleanse, and that's how they do it. That's how I do it. I did miss, like, I was starting to get into that rhythm, and then I went on some travel, and then I didn't do it for about 3 years, and then I came back to it this past spring. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the blog, is because I was inspired to, because I was doing it, and then a lot of people were asking me all these questions, and I go, well, I'll just document all the things that I found. I created a custom GPT so that my wife and I could just get meal plans instead of having to figure things out, go, hey, this is what we have, this is what we're interested in. And the custom GPT does the meal plans and the grocery list. And, uh, and then, if something's happening that feels out of whack, I can just ask the custom GPT. And so, it's like you were saying, I like to go into like I don't know if strict is the right word, that might trigger some people, but go into like a diet where I'm really minimizing all this stuff. I mean, for the first time in human history, I can get cherries from Chile, and I can get, rice from India, and I'm getting all this food from all over the place. There's such an abundance. And the idea of restricting ourselves to a few things feels so crazy, but our ancestors were always limited, and always they were living by the seasons, and they didn't have access to everything all the time year round. And so it may feel unreasonable to do this type of thing, but our biology is really not built to be living in, with the access of food that we have now. So, going once a year, fasting for, 3 to 5 days, or doing this cleanse, once a year. It's a great way to check in with yourself and, find out what's really going on. And parasites and fungus aside, if you go into a diet like this, or you do some fasting, 2, 3 times a year, you're going to improve your metabolic flexibility. So your ability to process fats and sugars appropriately and remain a high performer day after day is going to go way up. So it's good to hit these reset buttons on occasion.
Yeah, I know a lot of these things, to your point, might seem, unreasonable because of the modern world in which we live. But there's ancient wisdom into some of these practices because of how long they've been around, and how folks navigated these challenges before modern day technology to nauseum. As much as we try and solve the problem, sometimes there's already been a solution for hundreds of years that's right in front of us, and we continue to ignore. And these are some of the practices that help us stack on. And I say stack with intention, because not just one thing alleviates the issues that we face, but when we look at ourselves and we look at our output in a holistic way. I always told my wife, I'm all about stacking the deck in our favor. If I could improve the percentage by 1% by doing this, by doing that, that just is gonna stack the house, pun intended, um, in our favor. And then obviously reality is reality, control what we can control, but these are things we can control. And these are ways to move the needle in our direction, from whether it be the cleanse, fasting, and the other practices we break down here, in order to have ourselves operate at our best, at an optimized level for performance, decision making, for friends, family, presence, and even more. And I know you mentioned before this being part of your blog. We will have that link in the show notes. We could have it available in our school community as well. So we'd love for folks to check that out. But anything you want to add when it comes to the cleanse, parasites, fungal presence in the body, and anything else folks should know before we wrap things up, Mike?
Yeah, in the modern world, our modern solutions are very good at covering up the symptoms, which are just the signals. And so, again, this type of stuff may seem extreme, but it's I consider to be insane to be living in a world where we're constantly covering things up. And so, if we're always using these modern solutions to cover things up, it's worth looking at what's actually happening at a deeper level. And this is one opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and it starts with the first question, and something you said at the beginning. What is the ecosystem of you? Right? Because everything in the body has an agenda. And sometimes the agenda doesn't always match what your agenda is. So you need to be aware of that, because everyone has parasites. Those parasites could be running your emotions, running your decisions, running your cravings. And the only way to find out if you have parasites is to test if you have any. But it can only measure so many. You're better off cleansing. And why go halfway? Go the full way, because a cleanse after 2 weeks to 30 days might reveal that you have parasites, but you want to commit to at least 60 days at a minimum to experience the die off and get the benefits of that. Your skin is a reflection of what's happening in the gut. So, this could be a solution to your skin problems. This could be a solution to your cravings. This could be a solution to your anxiety, your mood, so many things. And again, we're talking correlation, not causation, as there's many things that can impact that. Peak cleanse is right near a full moon, or you want your peak of the cleanse to be right near a full moon, because the parasites, the fungus, they'll follow not just seasonal, but lunar cycles as well. Aim for the cleanse to be in the spring or in the fall. Grab the supplements and eat clean. You want grass fed, grass finished, pasture raised, and you want to save some money along the way. I put in my notes, say less. Should have started with that, right? If folks want to save money, why not hop into a cleanse? And then prepare for the die off. The die off will give you symptoms. And if this is your first one and you've been eating carbs and starches every single day, it could be a little rough. Could be a little rough. But just like they say with aftershave, the burn means it's working. The die off means it's working. And the roughness and that flu that you feel means it's working. So you want to be prepared for the die off. If you want to reduce those symptoms, consider the coffee enema. Just make sure you wait for it to get to room temperature and buy it online. Don't buy the enema stuff in person. That's just awkward for you and the cashier. Nobody wants to go through that. The liver cycle is every 15 minutes. So when you do the coffee enema, hold it for 20 minutes or so. Increase the glutathione, which is an antioxidant for your body. And then understand that after the cleanse, your psychology around food can change. Perhaps it was the parasite craving the sugar, not you. And then keep a food journal. Introduce these foods slowly. Get back to normal after 3 months or so, but you'll live with more mental clarity, fewer issues, a fuller life, a full stack life. And if you want more details on the protocol, be sure to check out the Full Stack School community, where you can get this blog post and more for free. But thanks for checking us out here for the Full Stack Podcast. That's Mike. I'm Ted. We'll catch you guys next time.